Hello, everybody. It is Monday morning after our first full Sunday of NFL football that you could have caught a triple header here on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. We had 3 games yesterday, a full slate, including a competitive game between the Redskins and Dolphins that I don't want to talk about because it crushed my soul. And also a thriller Sunday Night Football. The Dallas Cowboys top the New York Giants 27-26. Tony Romo leads the comeback with a touchdown pass to Jason Witten. And Dez Bryant, unfortunately for Dallas, breaks his foot in the victory, will be out 4 to 6 weeks. I was going down my list of takeaways for the first Sunday, but before I get to my last one, I'd like to tell you where you can find us. You can find us all over the web on our own website, hotnewstalkradio.com. You can stream us live. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter. Just search Hot News Talk Radio. Our Twitter handle, of course, is at Hot News Radio. You can also find us on the TuneIn Radio app for free in the Apple Store or the Google Play Store for those with Android devices. Search Hot News Talk Radio, give us a follow, press play, and you'll have Hot News Talk Radio wherever you go. You can also find us on YouTube if you search Hot News Talk Radio, and you'll be able to stream us live. You'll get to see my face and the faces of others if you wanted to know what we look like. The many different hats that's worn by Russell as he does the digital drive.
When he shows up.
Just saying. And we also have, for your viewing pleasure, shortened edits of some of those videos. We also interact on the social media. So tweet at us, message us on Facebook. We'd love to hear from you. And my final takeaway from the first Sunday of NFL football, which is the takeaway that I know you've been waiting for, it is the Tennessee Titans. Rookie quarterback Marcus Mariota throws 4 touchdowns in the first half, 209 yards, no interceptions, and he outshines the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and their rookie quarterback, Jameis Winston, who's the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. And the game was in Tampa, and it's just interesting to see because of the 2 quarterbacks, I don't think that anybody thought that Marcus Mariota was going to outplay Jameis that much. Like, if you had to guess which quarterback was going to be the one to steal all of the thunder, I personally would have guessed Jameis. He's the one that we've talked about being the most pro-ready. He played in a pro-style offense. He's a traditional quarterback. Marcus played in the spread, and he ran around a lot. No, Marcus looked like he knew where he was going. The NFL speed did not faze him at all. Meanwhile, Jameis's first ever NFL pass is an interception return for a touchdown. He just tried to float one over a defensive lineman, and the defensive lineman jumped up and caught it, and nobody looked more shocked than Jameis. I mean, surprise does not even begin to cover what he thought was happening there. You could get away with that in college. You're not getting away with that in the NFL. Even the big guys can jump really, really high. FYI. And Marcus looked poised. He looked calm. He didn't look to run all the time, which is one of the criticisms of him because he is a mobile quarterback. He used his feet to escape pressure. And then once he escaped pressure, he kept his eyes downfield, made some really great passes, threaded the needle a few times. I mean, I was really impressed with Marcus Mariota. And I know that there were some Buccaneers fans that thought the guy that you didn't draft, right? Because Marcus was second in the draft, which means the Buccaneers could have had him. The guy that you didn't draft, he just drops 4 touchdowns on you in the first half of a game. So that's got to be depressing for them. But I'm looking forward to watching the Titans and the many wide receiver acquisitions that they made. I think they did a good job with that. I think they did a good job boosting their defense, adding Brian Orakpo, who was really solid for Washington. He just wasn't able to have his pectoral muscle healthy. He just kept tearing it. He tore it twice in his time in Washington, and so that's why he's no longer there. But their loss is the Tennessee Titans' gain. I'd also like to talk a little bit of college football. I have some takeaways from Saturday as well. And a little bit of gloating is in order. Mr. Judd, who I pick against every week, every Wednesday, we flip-flop a little bit. Sometimes I pick on his show, sometimes he picks on my show. And it was his week last week to choose the games that we were picking from. And we both picked Arkansas to beat Toledo because it's Toledo. They're an underwhelming football program. Arkansas is in the SEC West. There were a lot of people's dark horse to be a top contender in that conference in the SEC. You saw the way that they can run the football. Brett Bielema's a really good coach. You just didn't look at Arkansas and go, they're losing to Toledo. But holy Toledo, they lost to Toledo. Toledo quarterback Philip Eli was in rare form. Former Alabama quarterback Philip Eli, I might point out. He had a heck of a game as Toledo beats Arkansas 16-12. And I think the more surprising thing there is not that Arkansas held Toledo to 16, but that they only managed to score 12 points. I would never have imagined this Arkansas team having trouble scoring, of all things. Not against a school like Toledo. No disrespect to Toledo, but come on. That one surprised me. Something that, and by the way, I'll take the loss. I will take the loss to be able to gloat. So, Mr. Judd, if you're listening, wherever you are, and you can catch the Mr. Judd Show from 11 to noon here on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. If you want to give him a call during his show or message him on Twitter at ELJudd and ask him if he's got any splaining to do, because I would love to hear it. I need to hear it deep within my soul. A little disappointment, though, because I did pick the Volunteers to beat the Oklahoma Sooners. It would have been an upset. I think the Sooners were the better team. I think that Tennessee, though, had so much going for them in terms of the talent that they have and the momentum they were riding on. I thought they could have beaten Oklahoma, and it was close. Oklahoma, the Sooners topped the Volunteers 31-24 in double overtime, and that was a wild game. It was incredibly fun to watch. I think when it comes to Oklahoma, their quarterback situation looked shaky initially, especially in the preseason. We weren't sure who was going to start and all of those things. And it turns out, really, we had nothing to worry about from the Sooners. They did an incredible job being prepared, and they look good. They look really, really good. And the thing about it, too, is that the Tennessee Volunteers, not Titans, the Vols wasted a performance from Jalen Hurd a little bit. 24 carries, 106 yards, and a touchdown. Hurd did an incredible job just picking up crucial first downs, knocking people over, which is what he does. He's the thunder of that game. But Baker Mayfield, quarterback for Oklahoma, he did throw 2 interceptions, but he also threw 3 touchdowns. They had him throwing the ball 40 times, which is the part that's incredible to me. I think that maybe Oklahoma needs to probably scale it back on the passing. They didn't do a terrible job running the ball. They ran by committee with Perrine and Mixon, but they're a scary team. They are a scary team, the Sooners are. And the Volunteers really needed that win just because of where they are in the SEC East. It's basically between them and Georgia, in my opinion, for who wins the SEC East. And Georgia's going to find a way to stumble in there somewhere because they just do. They'll lose to somebody that they ought to beat. But I don't think you can rely on that to say, hey, Tennessee's going to win the East. You need to win these kinds of close games against high-ranked teams if you're going to talk about winning the SEC. You've only got more tough games down the road. coming up here. Another game to talk about, Michigan State and Oregon. Michigan State was able to hold off Oregon doing defense, doing the job with the defense there. I was impressed with the Michigan State defense, including their goal line stand there to keep the Ducks out of the end zone. Connor Cook needed that, the Michigan State quarterback. He played a good game, but coming down the stretch there, that was all defense. Because Vernon Adams was rolling. He looked good. And Michigan State holds off the Oregon Ducks. Michigan State absolutely needed to have this victory. They did. They don't have a lot of tough teams on their schedule. So when they do have tough teams, they need to beat them. They need to beat the Ducks, and they need to beat Ohio State coming up the road here. Those are the two games they have to win if they want to be a national title contender. Because again, the two teams that they lost to last year, they only lost 2 games. The 2 teams that they lost to, Ohio State and Oregon. And who played in the national championship game last year? Ohio State and Oregon. So those are the games that they need to win, especially in that conference where it's not that tough, and quite frankly, it's not all that deep, particularly. And yeah, they got to hold on there. That's something that I see with the Big Ten, is that really the only 2 teams that you can watch are Michigan State and Ohio State, because those are the 2 teams that are going anywhere. We really, really hoped Wisconsin was one of those teams, and then Alabama showed up and pushed them around and beat them up, bludgeoned them. So that's hard to see. And Alabama this week as well. When other SEC teams began to stumble and began to falter, because last week we looked at the SEC and went, everybody won except Vanderbilt, but everybody won. And we're like, wow, the SEC really is the best conference in football. It's really not that close. I think it is kind of close. I still think the Pac-10 has something to offer. I don't think that they're as worthless as they're made out to be. I think a lot of people around here don't like the Pac-10 very much. I understand they don't play a physical brand of football, but they're good teams. Those are good football teams out there. I don't think you just discount them because they don't play the tough, hard-nosed, physical brand of football that we like to see in the South, as though they don't have big guys over there too. No, those guys hit pretty hard. I know that Oregon offensive line and defensive line last year, though, those were some big guys. Those are some big boys. Alabama just kills MTSU over the weekend, and it wouldn't be that impressive, except, again, Arkansas loses to Toledo. So that's an SEC team that loses to somebody that they shouldn't have. Auburn beats Jacksonville State, but just barely. In overtime, 27-20. And they were losing at points in that game. And it did not look like they were going to get out of that. And Auburn is ranked 6th in the nation. Jacksonville State could easily have won that game. Georgia, they beat Vanderbilt 31-14. Started off slow in that one. You have some teams where you're like, the SEC is the strongest conference, and then you have some games where it doesn't look that way. And again, it's not against high levels of competition. It's not like anyone played their version of Florida State or Oregon and then they got challenged and lost. You were losing to Jacksonville State, Auburn. I mean, Malzahn squeaked away with that one. I mean, they needed a late touchdown. That upset would have been huge. Huge. Would have been the first time an FCS program beat a nationally ranked FBS program. That is indescribable. And So you're looking at the SEC. I think this is a down year for them as a conference. It has to be, because it's not as strong as it was. It's not as consistent, and it's faltering to teams that, quite frankly, shouldn't even be in the same class with them. We're going to be talking about the SEC in our next segment as well. Jim McElwain, specifically, University of Florida. He and one of his players get into it. We're going to talk some respect here on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Clutch. Next.
We expect lots of sunshine and beautiful weather out there through the afternoon. Highs back into the upper 70s. Tonight, clear, cool again, lows lower 50s. For Tuesday, as well as the midweek, continue dry, lots of sunshine. A little warmer, though, with highs 80 to 84. Experience the demo teams of the U.S. Air Force F-22 Raptor, FA-18 Hornet, U.S. Marine Corps Osprey, and the Geico Skytypers at the Wings Over North Georgia Air Show in Rome, October 3rd and 4th. And I'm WDEF News 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Orr. On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection: loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
Here you are, working to keep your customers happy and to manage your cash flow. IRS problems are the last thing you need, but here they are, flapping about you like vultures. Get help from Eric Pelton and his team of accountants at E.J. Pelton Company. Audits, letters, proposed return changes, 1099s, penalty threats. Pelton Tax Resolution Services brings peace of mind and helps you keep more of what you've earned. EJPelton.com. Offices on Brainerd Road and in Saudi Daisy, just north of the Bilo. That's EJ Pelton. Call 622-3156. Think ahead, 622-3156. An alternative to insurance for people of Christian interest is Samaritan Ministries, a cost-sharing group whose fellow members contribute to your medical expenses. Hi, David Tulis here, member of Samaritan Ministries. I have no deductibles, no silly in-network rules. I choose my own doctors. I'm a cash payer and get the cash discount with med providers. I'm 100% compensated by Christian families around the nation who send their checks directly with a personal note and pray for me in my medical distress. I have a family membership. I write a $405 check every month to a person in need. Just love it. Learn more about Samaritan Ministries Tuesday, September 29 at 7 p.m. at Brainerd Hills Presbyterian Church on East Brainerd Road. It's a mini conference on the Christian alternative to medical insurance.
Hello, everybody. This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Clutch with Keon Rose. I'm Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today. We talked a lot of football after the first full Sunday of NFL football and the second full Saturday of college football. We have had a lot to talk about, including the decline of Peyton Manning, Marcus Mariota looking like a boss, the Volunteers and their double overtime loss to the Sooners, and many, many more things. But we're going to talk about something here because I have been talking about authority since basically I got to be on this show. I got the opportunity to host a show here at AM 1240. I am incredibly grateful. And when I have, it's something that I've always wanted to do. When I've had the opportunity to stand in front of a microphone, I don't just want to talk about sports and numbers. Those things are fun, of course. And I'm not saying they don't matter, because they do matter, or I wouldn't be here and you wouldn't be listening. But I always thought if I had the opportunity to stand in front of a microphone and host a show, I would try and talk about things that make us better, that give us that full view of life that sports is supposed to teach us. Sports are supposed to teach us life lessons and how to be adults and how to treat one another, how to be a teammate, how to treat somebody who is opposing you. The other players, they want you to lose because that's how they win. But that doesn't mean you have to be a jerk. And it doesn't mean that they have to be a jerk. How do you interact with those people? There's a lot of lessons to learn. And one of the things that I found myself talking the most about is authority and what we expect from people in authority, people in positions higher than us, what we expect from our president, what we expect from our mayor, what we expect from our sheriff, what we expect from our bosses, our teachers. People put in authority over us. Sometimes people that we chose, sometimes people that we didn't. But the point still stands that people in authority have a certain responsibility. They carry a certain weight. They carry a certain burden that the rest of us simply do not. And the thing that I'm noticing a lot is with coaches. Earlier in the summer, Steve Sarkisian of USC went to the boosters meeting. He was drunk. You remember the whole thing. And he's been since forgiven by his players. He's still gotten the opportunity to coach. That's something that, look, I'm not saying that what he did was good, but I'm saying you can live with that because it wasn't a direct coach to player interaction. It was him being irresponsible on his own. When it comes to coaches that have hit players, said slurs to players, those things, that's damaging. But you don't have to even go to that extreme to be damaging. And in the case of Fred Taylor's son, Kelvin Taylor, who he did something wrong. He messed up. They were playing, and Florida was playing, and basically Kelvin Taylor did the throat slash gesture, say game's over. It is a violent gesture. Okay, you're basically saying cut your throat. You're dead. It's not rocket science. That's the reason why that's against the rules, because we do not threaten people with violence, even if the violence is imaginary and completely metaphorical. You still don't do it. Because, of course, there's some kid somewhere watching that game not understanding the metaphor, okay? And maybe their parents aren't there to explain it to them because it's just football. If little Tommy wants to watch football, why should I have to explain to him that someone slashing their throat does not actually imply violence? Shouldn't have to explain that. So you get fined, you get penalized for that kind of behavior. And Kelvin Taylor did it. And the team was penalized in the game. And Jim McElwain started off on a tirade against him, against Kelvin Taylor, who is the son of NFL running back Fred Taylor. McElwain started in on this guy. I mean, spit was flying out of his mouth. The veins in his head were popping. I understand that Kelvin Taylor messed up. I do. The player made a mistake, and now he needs to be coached. But is there not another way? Is there not another way? And did you try it first before you resorted to screaming and just completely losing your head? I don't think that's good leadership. In fact, I think it's very poor leadership, and it reflects very poorly on Jim McElwain himself and the University of Florida. And anybody who's got University of Florida jokes right now, just save it. Just keep it to yourself. It reflects poorly on the University of Florida for him to do that. When you light into a player, and it's, again, When you're talking about the relationship between a player and a coach, depending on the ages of the people involved, that's a different relationship. When Norv Turner was the head coach of the San Diego Chargers, he yelled at players. But these are NFL players. They're grown men. They would yell back. Phillip Rivers, quarterback of the Chargers, and Norv is no longer the head coach of the Chargers, by the way. Phillip Rivers notoriously yelled at Norv Turner. Notoriously. And I have no problem with that. Because in that relationship, despite the fact that you're the head coach and you are over me, you are still in a lot of ways my peer. If you're going to yell at me, I can yell back at you. I have a way to say, stop that. That's not okay. This is a player in college. He's in his 20s. If even in his 20s, 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. He's young. He can't yell back. We don't allow that. He just stood there and took it because you have to. And, you know, someone could just say, you know, well, be a man and just stand there and take it. Why? Why? What? Because retaliating is not being a man. Having some kind of recourse, some kind of outlet isn't being a man. He's not allowed to be a man. He is basically allowed to be a dummy standing there, taking abuse and not doing anything about it. Because he can't. It looks bad. It looks worse on him if he were to yell back. It looks bad of Jim McElwain to yell at him in the first place. It looks worse if he were to yell back. He's not allowed to. He's a student. The relationship is altogether different from that of an NFL coach and an NFL player, because in college, your coach is your mentor. He's your teacher. If I do something incorrectly in class and the chemistry teacher yells at me, I can't yell back at the chemistry teacher. This is your teacher, and the class is football. You can't yell back. You're not supposed to. You're not allowed. So here's somebody in a position of power, and by the way, making quite a bit of money too, millions. I don't know exactly how much Jim McElwain is getting paid, but he's got a nice chunk of change going on. He's an SEC head coach. They all make a lot of money. They all do. Even the head coach of Vanderbilt makes a lot of money. No offense, Vanderbilt, but you're just really easy to poke fun at. Even he makes a lot of money. And Vanderbilt's not good. You know how much the players make? Nothing. They make nothing. So here is a young man playing football for free, getting yelled at by a man making millions to coach him. Well, guess what? Just based on that relationship alone, you have to be a good leader. And if someone does something that you don't like as a leader, that you've said, you know what, we don't do that at this university. We don't do those gestures. We don't make those signs. Furthermore, it causes us to lose yardage in the football game. It affects us in the game and out of the game. If he does it anyway, there has got to be a better way to communicate that than screaming at him on the sideline. I can't even understand what McElwain was saying. He was so intense. The relationship is different because you're dealing with a young man who isn't fully developed yet. Men's brains aren't finished developing until they're around 23, 24 years old. This guy's like what, 19, 20? Teach him. Don't scream at him. That's not good leadership. There are times in my life, and also, by the way, before I go into that, the cameras are rolling. If you wanted to yell at the guy, okay, this young man, I'm not old enough to call him a kid, but he basically is in relation to Jim McElwain. If you wanted to yell at this kid, do it behind closed doors. You pull him off to the side and you say, Kelvin, you and I need to talk later. And then yell at him in your office if that's the way you feel you have to go about it. Because to some people, that's what coaching is. Coaching is yelling. Coaching is not yelling. Coaching is instructing. Coaching is guiding. Sometimes that does mean raising your voice, but it doesn't mean embarrassing a guy. It doesn't. In my life, my parents, who were the leaders of our home, I think they did a great job. My parents yelled at me a lot. So let me not just stand here and say, never yell at somebody. That's not the point. You can yell. There is a time and a place for that. Not all the time, and it shouldn't be your first course of action. But there is a time and a place for yelling. In front of the cameras, in front of everybody, publicly shaming the dude, though, that's not the time or the place for having a screaming match with a player. It wasn't even a screaming match. You know why? Taylor didn't say anything back. Wasn't allowed. That was neither the time nor the place. And it was wrong of him to do that. My parents have yelled at me a lot. But one thing I appreciate about my parents is if I was misbehaving in public, pull me off to the side and say, we're talking later. We are going to have a conversation about this later. And we did. And some of that involved a butt whooping. And some of that involved being yelled at. And I understood that I needed that. But they never did it in public. They never went out of their way to shame me in public. And that's what you're doing if you're going to yell at a guy on a sideline of a nationally televised football game. That is what that is. You have a problem with him. You keep it between you and him, in-house, okay? I don't think that that's necessarily great leadership. I think that and the stuff that Phil Jackson used to pull with Kobe and Shaq, where he would just leak their business to the media, I don't like that either. Keep it between you and the player. If you have to yell, if you feel like you need to yell and raise your voice to get your point across, which I don't think you need to do, not in that situation. If you were coaching the guys properly initially to say, we don't do that, we don't act this way, if you had gotten your point across initially, you wouldn't have this problem now. But if you feel like this is the only way I can communicate this idea here needs yelling, and some of them do, then you need to find your office or a side room somewhere or the locker room, and you keep it between you, Jim McElwain, and the player, Kelvin Taylor. Do not yell at him in front of a TV camera. What's he supposed to learn from that? He's learning to be embarrassed, not learning not to do this gesture again. That's all. This is Clutch with Keon Rose here on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Thank you for joining me today. We'll be back tomorrow with more of your local sports news here in Chattanooga's leader in news and home of the NFL, AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
Expect lots of sunshine and beautiful weather out there through the afternoon. Highs back into the upper 70s. Tonight, clear, cool again, lows lower 50s. For Tuesday as well as the midweek, continue dry, lots of sunshine. A little warmer, though, with highs 80 to 84. Experience the demo teams of the U.S. Air Force F-22 Raptor, FA-18 Hornet, U.S. Marine Corps Osprey, and the Geico Sky Typers at the Wings Over North Georgia Air Show in Rome, October 3rd and 4th.